everyone. Nick Amato here, and we're going to go over to Great American Tackle Shop and visit Gary Waterhouse. He's going to show us some rod repair tricks. Okay, I'm over at Great American Tackle with Gary Waterhouse, and he's going to show us some rod repair techniques.
All right. Well, let's start off by this rod here that has a bad tip. The ceramic broke out of it either because of a swivel coming up and knocking it out of there. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use an alcohol burner to remove the tip off of it. So what we're doing is we're just using just a little bit of heat to remove that tip off of there. The tight material. So that's all you do. You just heat it up enough to where it slides off of there. You don't want to overheat it because you'll harm the graphite fibers. So then what we'll do is we'll size up a new guide. Okay, so we've got the proper size guide now with the ceramic already in the tip. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to glue it on there. The type glue that we use is a tip-top cement. A lot of people think it's just a glue stick, but it's really not. It's got a special compound so we can remove these tips without harming anything. So we're just going to apply a little bit of glue on the rod tip itself. We're going to take our guide and we're just going to heat that glue up just a little bit. Don't overheat it. Then as it goes on, we're going to adjust it and line it up to the first guide. Just like that. And we're going to double check it by looking down our rod. And that one there is square. So we're going to give it a few seconds here. We're going to let it dry up a little bit, cool off. And if you time it just right, the glue will peel right off of there. And it looks just like the factory. A lot of people are under the impression you can take and pop another ceramic back into a guide that's lost the ceramic. That is not so. The reason for the ceramic to pop out is because of being damaged, a wire being damaged. Yeah, you might be able to get in there and super glue it, and it's going to last maybe a trip or half a trip before it will come right back out again. It's just easier just to stop by the shop or pick up a tip yourself and do it just like I just did. So that one there's all ready to go fishing again. It's ready to go just 5 minutes after you're done doing it. Now what we're going to end up doing, we had a guide here that got broken while we were out fishing, and we hate to stop fishing just because we lost the ceramic out of a guide. The safest thing to do is remove strip your rod back down again to where you can get to the guide, and then take a sharp knife that you've got in your pocket, and what we're going to do is we're just going to remove that guide. So the safest way to do that is to always cut the thread loose on the foot of the guide that's on the blank, the bad guide. So all we're going to do is we're just going to scrape it. Until we get that down to where you can see the foot starting to come through now. So we're not really touching the blank, but you can see the guide foot being exposed there. That's what we're doing. Then you're going to take that guide and just wiggle it out of there and remove it. Now we're down to the raw blank. So you can actually string your rod at this point and start fishing again. You're not going to harm the rod by having a guide missing, but you're going to sure lose a lot of line by running line through a guide that has lost the ceramic. It'll just shred braided line. So what you want to do is if you're not going to do the repair yourself and you're going to take it someplace, try and leave as much of the thread attached to the blank, so when the person that does the repair for you takes that off of there, they'll be able to tell. You'll watch here as I take my thumbnail and peel that thread off of there. there's the actual true color of the thread that's on that rod. You can't tell that when you're looking at it from the top, because it's got epoxy over the top, so it goes darker than the actual color of thread. So that's what we're doing, is we're going to try and match that thread up. And if you're real lucky, like I was here, you can grab a piece of that thread and peel it off of there and clean up that rod without having to do much afterwards. So now we're going to remove the excess thread, being very careful not to dig into the blank. And I'm going to have to get my cheaters on here now, because my eyesight isn't as well. We want to try and clean it up as best we possibly can, so that when we get ready to wrap that guide back on there again, it'll go on very smooth and easy.
Now at this point, Gary, what's the trick to not dig into the blank itself?
Just take your time and use a very, very sharp knife to barely just scrape that epoxy that's attached to the blank on there. So now we're ready to start our rewrap. So what we'll do is we'll line this all back up. We got our thread in the rack. We're going to take a piece of tape here and we're going to secure this guide back on the onto the blank.
Okay, so what have you got here? You've got some tape.
I've got a strip of masking tape that I'm going to use to secure the guide to the blank. I'm going to need to get a little bit narrower piece here on this particular one because it's got a real small foot. So you position the new guide where the old guide was. And that holds it in place so I can start my wrap now. Make sure we're lined up in between our two guides.
Okay, looks like you've got the guide lined up there.
Yeah, we got the guide secured to the blank with some 1/8" masking tape. So now we're going to start our thread wrap, and then we'll be able to get epoxy over the top of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over the top of the rod here, and we're going to lock that thread down. And then all we're going to do is we're going to start to rotate the blank. So the thread is side by side now. And you're going to do about 4 or 5 wraps. And then you're going to take that thread and cut it off of there. Then we're going to continue our wrap till it goes up over the top of that foot. And we're just going to rotate it around to where we get up close to our tape, where we're going to remove the tape now because we don't need it to hold that guide on there because the thread's doing that for us. Then we're going to bring it up to about 5 wraps away from the base of the foot. We're going to lock that down to where it stays in one place. We're going to take a piece of monofilament, and we're going to do what we call a whip finish to finish the wrap. So we're going to take our monofilament, run it underneath the strand of thread, start to rotate it around, again keeping your your thread side by side. And once we get it up to the very end, what we're going to do is we're going to hold our thumb on it. We're going to cut our thread, drop it in the hole, then we're going to take that monofilament and we're going to pull that thread underneath our wraps. And that's what locks it in. So we're going to tighten everything down. We're going to put tension on that thread. So when we take our razor blade and touch that thread, you get a nice clean finish. And we're ready for epoxy.
Wow, that came out great, Gary.
And you double check your lineup on your guides. And everything looks just as square as can be. We mix up our epoxy and we're ready to go.